G'day viewers, which is passing my normal landmark as we head up towards the Cajon Pass summit. I've been watching a few other streamers try and get down this hill, and I've put up one tutorial which is using the Sawtooth braking method, which I believe is fairly realistic. But I'm told there's another realistic method where you set an application of your air brake and then rock down on the dynamics over the top of them. I'm going to give that a crack this time round. So we're in a train of about 4,500 tons. We have just our locomotives on the front. We have 1, 2, 3 locomotives. And we're approaching the summit now. And of course, just to add to the fun and excitement, it started to rain. That's okay. The method should work regardless. So, had an uneventful run up from Victorville. No dramas so far. And we are on the summit approach. Just quickly check the map. So, we're not far away now. So soon I'll think about slowing down a bit. Because you don't really want to go over the top at about 33 mile an hour. What I'm going to do is go over the top. I'm aiming for about 20 or so. And as soon as I get into the 0.6, once we start to accelerate again, I shall make a minimum air brake application and get the dynamics into setup, and we'll see how we go. Now, the only objection I have to this particular method is that if you use your air brakes applied all the way down the hill, you're going to make your brake blocks and your wheels pretty hot. Quite possibly to the point that you might actually melt the surface layer on the brake blocks, and then they become very slippery, and they really don't do anything anymore apart from get hotter. So, you wouldn't want to apply too hard. There's our first set of signals up there, so we're not far from the summit now, so I'm going to start powering off. Just put it down to about, yeah, it'll do for the moment, notch 3. When we get past this first set of signals, I'll drop the rest of the power off. No idea why there's a whistle board up here, but there is. Just getting the rest of our power off now. And I will pop our dynamics into setup just to get them warming up. Because you're supposed to keep your throttle idle for 10 seconds and then in setup for a while before you start using them. Alright, we're coming over the summit now. So, let's go for a minimum application of the auto brake. And let's bail off the independent brake, which means our brake cylinder will show 0. Now, we didn't get much of a reduction on the brake pipe when we went into the minimum reduction there. So I have to say I'm not that happy with that. That's probably not enough. Alright, just to be on the safe side, and we are going pretty quick. No, we are slowing down. I'm going to leave it the way it is. Let's not second guess ourselves. Because after all, if this doesn't work, you'll never know because I won't show you. So if you're watching it, you know it worked. Me? Would I do that? Alright, we have a downhill limit of 30 here. Now, most of our train's still actually going up the hill. So we're over here, and we're just coming into the gradient sweat change now. We still have got our air brakes on, and I'm now going to dynamic up. So let's just take this to about 3. Let's just hold that for a while. Let's just see how that feels. So the front of our train is now getting into the steeper gradient where it's about 3%. We are still slowing down, so happy for the moment. Rail driver just asserted itself there and popped my dynamics up to 4, but that's okay, I'll just leave that alone. I have a very old rail driver. I got it when MSTS came out in 2001. I've had it for rather a long time. Alright, 22 mile an hour, I'm happy with that speed. We are still slowing down, but most of our train won't actually be in the 3% yet. You can see where it starts to go down quite steeply. So it won't be long until all of our train's in the 3%, so I'm just going to leave the dynamics alone for the moment, even though we've now slowed down to 19 miles an hour. And 18, because I want my whole train into this area before I start mucking around. So basically when we put a minimum set on the air brakes using the auto brake handle over here, strangely called the auto brake, they're not really anything automatic about them at all, except that they have valves that set the pressure you ask for. But anyway, that's a different story. So that brought our brake pipe down to 83, which means our brake cylinder along the trains, now 0 is only showing the locomotive because we're bailed off. And we're bailed off to keep the dynamics working, because if you're not bailed off in the locos, the dynamics will stop working. So, just going back to where I was before I distracted myself, we've done a 7-pound reduction on the brake pipe. So we came down from 90 to 83, and that's been reflected at the rear. That means on all of the carriages we have a 14-pound application of the brakes. Actually, it could be more than that. Is it 2 times or 2.5 times? I never can remember. One or the other. It would be somewhere between 14 and 17. Let's just leave it at that and see how it goes. So, cruising away happily. We went down to 17 briefly, and we've come back up to 18 now, so we'll just keep a bit of an eye on that. So far this method is actually working okay. As we pass the defect detectors that don't do anything, unfortunately. It would be really cool if they came into the game. We've now popped up to 19, 20, so we're starting to creep up. So let's just take our dynamics up. Let's go up to 7. I wanted to go to 6, but the rail driver went to 7. It's okay, we'll see how it goes. Let's see if we hold this 20 mile an hour or not. Now I don't have the HUD turned on, which means I don't have the accelerometer. Oh yeah, we've just dropped down to 19, 18. Okay, let's just come back to 6. See how we go here. Wheel slip could be our enemy coming down this hill, because it is raining. And the game doesn't actually simulate it, but if you work on the rails, you'll know that when it first starts to rain, the rails are incredibly slippery. It's not until the rain's lasted long enough to wash the accumulated oils and dust off the tracks that they actually regain their adhesion properly. Alright, we're still losing speed at this point. So let's not come back to 5. See how we go. Now, if there's one piece of advice you take from me when it comes to driving trains, make a small change and wait. Don't be in a rush. Unless your train's running away, in which case you probably want to apply the emergency brake. Now, interestingly enough, if you did actually apply the emergency brake and stop yourself on a grade, before you can release that brake, you're going to have to get out and put the handbrake on every single car so that your train doesn't roll away. And then, of course, you've got the catch-22. How do you get going again? Because your brakes are on right through the whole train, even though you've charged up the pipe again. It might sound like a weird thing that you have to do, but the reason is that the independent on your locomotive will not hold a heavy train. Just not a chance. Your loco will just slide down the hill like it's on snow. Whoosh will be the only sound you hear. Until you hear that crunching, crashing kind of sound as the rest of your train ends up on top of you. Morbid, isn't it? Alright, we're holding speed now. So we've got our dynamics on 5. You know, I'm pretty sure when I started that trip, that was a girl. But anyway, that's okay. One day that character will do something, and that will be a joyous day for us all. So we're holding pretty happily so far on the 18 miles an hour. So interestingly, this method does, if you put it on early enough, actually seem to work okay. Can't say I mind it. It's a bit more of a set and forget thing, I guess. So if you like sitting in the chair and not doing very much, this is the method for you. If you prefer the Sawtooth method, where you're a little more active in the game, you can always go that one. They both work. Oh, we're picking up speed again. Maybe I spoke a little early. Alright, let's just pop our dynamics up to 6. I'm just using the pointer instead of using the rail driver, because the rail driver will probably jump 2 notches. You know, that's had a pretty immediate effect. We've settled back down to 18 again. Little 4-wheel driving club over here on the left. And back down to 17, so back to 5. Generally speaking, you want to stay 15 to 23 mile an hour coming down a hill like this. So we're on the underside of that. The reason you don't want to go too much faster is your dynamics get less effective the faster you go. It sounds weird to when you say it, but it is true. And it's not just a game thing, it's a reality thing. We've popped back up to 18 now. It might actually be just a little bit brave and just let this creep up to 20 before I give it any more dynamics. And see if we can find a nice point where we can hold it and it doesn't creep too much and we can keep it in control. You can tell your dynamics are being relatively effective because we've got 37,000 pounds of force. And you see, remember how I said that gets a little bit less effective the faster you go? We just dropped from 38 to 37 when we got to 20. So let's go up to 6. We've increased our effort. We're holding 20 for now. We've only got another 2.5 miles before we come out of the steepest part and go down to the 2% gradient, and you can tell that because of the speed limit. Our train seems to be pretty well behaved so far. Mind you, we've been out of the cab for a little while now, but I just glanced over at the rail driver and we are doing 18. So it's probably time to pop back in there. And let's just drop this brake back to 5. Now, this area does flatten out a little, and then it gets steep again, so it's a little bit deceptive. Interestingly, we've lost another pound on the brake pipe. Come down to 82. That hasn't propagated all the way to the back yet. And it also, interestingly, hasn't had a corresponding change in increase in the brake cylinder pressure, which I would have thought the loco brake would have gone up by a couple of pounds when the brake light went down by 1 rather. But there you go, didn't. So we'll probably find, as we get out of the latter area, which I think is still about 2.4, 2.5, it's interesting that the HUD says 2 miles to go to the 45 mile, but I'm pretty sure we just passed a 45 mile speed. So, but okay. Let's just pop the HUD on because I'm curious how steep this is. Alright, it's 2.6. I'll leave the HUD on. I normally drive without it, but I'll leave it on. We've come down to 2 now. So let's just bring our dynamics back a bit. Because we're in a 2% gradient now, and we're losing a bit too much speed. Back to 2.7% now, so we're getting back into the steeper area. And you can see by both the accelerometer bubble, which is starting to jiggle in the upwards direction, and you can also see the white line on the HUD, which is drawing stuff up, and the rail driver's decided to set us back to 3. How about we don't do that? How about, in fact, we go up to 5? Glad I noticed that. Rain's getting heavier as well. And we're in another 3% down bubble now. And the accelerometer's quite even, so we're not really gaining, we're not really losing. If anything, I think the centre of the accelerometer is just below the centre line on the HUD there, so it would suggest it was very slightly slowing down. I'm just trying to watch the white line on the speed indicator there. It's hard to tell. Looks like maybe it's losing the odd pixel here and there, so it might actually be going backwards a little. Well, there you go, folks. I think we've gone far enough to see that this alternate braking method does actually work. So in my other tutorial, I go through the Sawtooth method, and in this one I'm going through the minimum set method. So do the one that makes you happy, I guess, because they both seem to work okay. They both require a little bit of juggling, so there's a bit of thought going on. I think the Sawtooth method, you probably need more planning, and you probably need to understand a little bit more about the air brake system before you can use it effectively, whereas this one you can probably drive with a little less railway knowledge and get away with it. So I'll leave it there. No need to watch me go all the way down on the hill in this method, because clearly it works. Alright, thanks for watching. See you later.